I just recently finished listening to The Last Star by Rick Yancey. This is the third and final book in his Fifth Wave series. The series is a story about how an alien culture is going to take over the planet through a series of ever-increasingly diabolical waves of attacks, starting with something very low-tech, dropping objects into the sea to create large tsunamis, all the way into creating and distilling fear and distrust among the humans so that they really won't bond together, they won't make communities, and they start to kill and turn on each other. The interesting thing about this book, for me, was this kind of really interesting action. I liked to see the interplay of the humans and these alien races, and what would happen when humans are faced with this basically unstoppable challenge. This challenge that is just is huge in front of them and is unstoppable. The first book, The Fifth Wave, had a lot of really cool action in it and kind of set up, the aliens' first set of waves in their invasion. The second book, The Infinite Sea, got away from the action a little bit and spent a lot of time setting up the philosophical background of the story. What were some of the major themes and some of the major questions that the author was trying to get across? Book 3 then got back into that action. It still had some of those philosophical questions, but it really, got back into the ending and brought the whole story around to a conclusion. For me, one of the great pieces of this book, as a young adult book, was the strong female lead characters. I like seeing books for teens that really show women in strong power positions. Not stereotypical, canned characters, but women, girls, teen girls really, who are exercising, their abilities. The two main lead female characters in this story, in these stories, is Cassie, who we meet in the first book, and Ringer, who we find out her real name. Ringer is her nom de guerre, her military name. Her real name is Marika, we find out in the third book. Cassie, we meet in the first book. She's very resourceful. She's dedicated. She's focused. She draws her energy and her focus and her drive from a commitment to family and the love of those around her. She creates this kind of community around her that she really focuses on. Ringer, on the other hand, has been trained to fight, trained to utilize her strengths and her powers, and really builds upon her anger and really her kind of training is what really brings her around. But it was just really interesting to see these two strong female characters and how they are, I shouldn't say non-traditional. Cassie is kind of a traditional, maternal kind of character. But it was really cool to see these two, how they interacted with each other and how they really portrayed what women are capable of doing when given the chance. And so many young adult books don't really explore that kind of role of women in their stories. So it's good to see that in here. For me, I think that starting in the second book and really in this book, I kind of like some of the philosophical questions that were posed. The main question was, what makes us human? The aliens in their last wave are going to bomb all the cities, destroy all the cities, flush the humans out into the open, where they're going to face these trained human fighters. They've been brainwashed to think that people that aren't like them, who haven't gone through the training, are the infested alien ones. And they are out to kill those people that they think are, infested. And then the aliens had also been dropping these human bombs, these humans with bombs put into their throats or mouths or, somehow becoming human kind of explosives, IEDs, that people started to distrust each other. The goal of the alien fifth wave was to create such distrust such uncomfortableness for people to be around each other that they not only stay away from each other, but they kill each other. That they believe that they're an inherent danger and stay away from them. The aliens believe that if you could take away humans' ability to cooperate and trust, then they wouldn't advance, they wouldn't develop. So when the aliens have bombed us back to the Stone Age and done all the things they did to put civilization back on, a prehistoric level, then we would never advance because, we wouldn't trust other humans. We wouldn't be able to get together and create any kind of civilization. This was a really good question, and I thought it really was, in a way, thought-provoking. But the problem was that Book 2 just kept coming back to that same question over and over and over. And Book 3 dealt with it a lot as well. We kept seeing it over and over. To me, I thought it got to be too obvious. It got to be too, full frontal. That, the author wasn't trying to make like, oh, look, here's this question. Or even letting it sit in the background or you kind of pondering it. It just kept coming up again and again and again, and the characters were talking about it. It just got to be too obvious. It became a distraction from the story, which I thought the story was fairly interesting. But, this kind of repetitive beating down of this question, it just took a while away. I think also, too, the books, because they are being made into movies, I think it kind of relied on that movie, making techniques a little too much. The idea that movies have these kind of convenient little plot twists to it that help it. I think that took a lot away from me, and I didn't really necessarily appreciate that. So, for me, that became in fact, actually, it was interesting. The comment was made at one point that, the real world aren't like movies. Paraphrasing, but real world isn't like the movies. Things just don't happen for convenience. That was that was a comment that was made at some point, late in the third book. But then they used, Rick Yancey used that device to kind of, keep further the plot or save the main characters, whatever. Like three of the good guys were in a helicopter. They're being held captive in a helicopter that was circling around this alien army base and military base, and all of a sudden, the helicopter starts to, go down. It's crashing. But our three main characters, our three good guys, the book, they talked about how the helicopter was circling this military base. On one end of the base was a river, and they kept going over the river as they made their pass around the Air Force or the military base. So as the airplane is crashing or the helicopter is crashing, our good guys jump out and land in the river. I just thought it was a little too convenient, and then there were a few other places like that in there. The ending did have kind of this cool little twist. Something that was mentioned in the first book comes back in the end. I thought that was kind of a neat little device. I think in the end, I've got to put this on my third bookshelf. I mean, it was an interesting story. It's an intriguing story. It was kind of fun. I'm glad that I read all three of the books. I'm not sure I'm going to see the movies necessarily. I thought there was some merit to them, some values, but overall, I think the repetitive use of the questions and some of the kind of easy movie conveniences that the author utilized just took something away from the story. So for me, my third bookshelf.